In 1996, Nintendo watched Sony sell 20 million PlayStations in just 2 years. The entire industry had moved to CDs. Storage was cheap, games were cinematic, and third-party developers were migrating to Sony's platform. Nintendo's response? Double down on cartridges. This machine sold 33 million units worldwide. It brought analog control to console gaming and proved that 4-player couch gaming could define an entire generation. But it also taught the industry a lesson that still echoes today. Technical superiority doesn't guarantee market victory. The engineering inside was genuinely impressive. In several ways, it was more advanced than the PlayStation. The problem wasn't the console's capabilities. It was the strategic bet Nintendo made about what gamers actually wanted. Nintendo didn't want just another console. They wanted arcade-quality graphics at home without compromise. They partnered with Silicon Graphics, the company behind the visual effects in Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. SGI built workstations costing over $100,000 each. These machines powered Hollywood special effects and high-end simulation. Nintendo asked them to shrink that computational power into a $200 consumer box that kids could plug into TVs. The core requirement: no loading screens. Nintendo believed waiting for games to load killed the arcade experience they wanted to recreate. CDs took seconds to seek and load data. Cartridges accessed information almost instantly. 5 milliseconds versus 200 milliseconds for optical media. Speed mattered more than storage capacity. That was the fundamental bet Nintendo made. Cartridge manufacturing was straightforward but expensive. ROM chips got programmed at the factory with game data, then sealed in durable plastic shells and shipped ready to play. No moving parts, no fragile optical systems, completely reliable. But the cost difference was significant. A CD cost Sony 50 cents to manufacture. An N64 cartridge ran anywhere from $10 to $25 depending on storage capacity. That cost got passed directly to consumers. That price difference would define the entire console generation. The processor is a MIPS R4300i running at 93.75 MHz, nearly 3 times faster than PlayStation's 33 MHz chip. The Reality coprocessor rendered 150,000 texture-mapped polygons per second with proper perspective correction and Z buffering. PlayStation managed more raw polygons but without the same quality texture filtering. N64 graphics looked noticeably smoother. Nintendo's bilinear filtering hardware made 3D worlds feel solid instead of shimmering. The system used Rambus RDRAM with 562 megabytes per second bandwidth, 4 times faster than PlayStation. This let the N64 render complex scenes without slowdown. The trade-off? Only 4 megabytes of RAM total. PlayStation could stream data from CD. Speed came at the cost of capacity. Nintendo understood 3D games needed 3D control. The analog stick registered 360 degrees with pressure sensitivity. Inside sits an optical encoder that counts light interruptions to calculate position, accurate to 1 degree. The 3-handle design solved a real problem. Use the D-pad for 2D games, or the center handle for 3D. 1 controller, 2 control schemes. The Rumble Pack added force feedback. Sony copied this with DualShock a year later. Now every controller has haptic feedback. 4 controller ports came built in. GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, and Smash Bros. Defined couch gaming. Manufacturing costs forced higher prices. N64 games sold for $60 to $70. PlayStation games cost $40 to $50. Parents noticed. Storage was worse. The largest N64 cartridge held 64 megabytes. A PlayStation CD held 700 megabytes, 11 times more capacity. Final Fantasy VII needed 3 CDs. Square couldn't fit it on cartridges. The franchise moved to PlayStation. Other RPG developers followed. Nintendo's cartridges loaded at 5 megabytes per second. PlayStation managed 300 kilobytes per second. Nintendo was right about speed, but developers needed space for voice acting and cutscenes. Cartridges couldn't deliver affordably. By 1998, PlayStation had 400 games. Nintendo 64 had 150. The library gap created the sales gap. Every cartridge underwent electrical testing. The 50-pin connector had to align perfectly. Wear these pins down, and gamers would blow into cartridges. Nintendo said this didn't help, but millions did it anyway. The shells underwent stress testing. Nintendo wanted cartridges to survive drops and heat. Unlike CDs that could scratch, cartridges almost never failed. No moving parts meant nothing could break. Nintendo built 1.5 million consoles monthly at peak. Half of Sony's output, but with lower rejection rates. The final numbers tell the story. PlayStation sold 102 million units. Nintendo 64 sold 33 million. But those 33 million experienced something genuinely remarkable. GoldenEye proved console. First-person shooters could match PC gaming. Ocarina of Time became the template for every 3D adventure game after. Mario 64 taught an entire generation how to think and navigate in 3 dimensions. Every controller made after 1996 includes an analog stick. Rumble feedback became standard. 4-player couch gaming defined the party game genre. These innovations came from Nintendo's engineering team. The N64 proved you can have superior graphics, faster performance, and revolutionary controls but still lose the market if your games cost more and your library is smaller. Sony understood what gamers wanted at scale. Nintendo understood what engineers valued. In the late 1990s, understanding the mass market mattered more than understanding pure technology. But the engineering legacy lived on. Modern consoles use solid-state storage again because speed eventually became crucial. SSDs in PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X deliver what Nintendo wanted 3 decades ago: instant access without sacrificing capacity. If you want to see how Sony capitalized on Nintendo's lessons, the PlayStation 2 story comes next. It became the best-selling console in history by fully embracing optical media and learning from Nintendo's strategic mistakes.